Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Please like and subscribe. This is a nice summer set using one of my favorite colors, yellow. There's quite a few different techniques in this set. So we've got color blocking, 3D, ombre and smile lines. I hope you enjoy. So I'm going to start with Bright White from HD Pro, and I'm just going to do the tips of the nails that are going to be ombre. So I just pick it up and put it against the join, the end of the free edge of the natural nail, and just blend it up that natural nail. And then using the belly of my brush, I make sure the sides are nice and flat and neat, and then as I work it in, keeping the sides in nice and tight, I pull it down towards the tip. I'm just making sure that application is nice and smooth. I've missed a tiny little bit on the end of this, so you just see me pick up a tiny little bit and add it to the end of that tip there. So I'm doing exactly the same on this nail. This is also an ombre. It's just feathering it up the nail and then using the belly of my brush to pull it down and keep those sides nice and tight so we don't create any bulk on the nail. So the pinky is going to be a colour block nail. So I'm using my nude, which is Rosy Peach from HD Pro. I'm going to work it around the cuticle area. Now I did make an error on this nail and I left it in just to prove that you can correct yourself. It really, if you go wrong, don't panic. Just keep going and you can correct it. So what I did, I put too much of my product over the main section of the nail rather than keeping it to the left. So I left myself with not enough product down at the tip end. But I'll just add it in. So I did think I was going to chop it and then thought, well, why? Leave it in and show them that you can correct a nail and it's not a problem. The only thing with correcting this is that I've got to work quite quickly now, because adding in on the end, the cuticle area is starting to set up and I do need to obviously cut into make the design with my craft knife. So you'll see me come in with my craft knife and I place the tip where I want to start cutting, and then what I'm doing is taking the top end that is already set in, I'm pulling that away as quickly as I can. What I would normally do is put the blade where I want to start cutting and then rock it back to where I want to finish cutting. But because I made an error, I just had to try and get that off as quickly as possible up near the cuticle area. As you can see, it started setting on the nail.
So what I also found here was that at the cuticle area, it wasn't thick enough, that there was not enough depth to it for me to butt up the glitter. So again, you will see me add a little bit in, but as long as you're working in the same ratio, you will not get like any shadow lines where you've added beads in. You've just got to make sure you're working at the correct ratio with your product. So that was a bit of a balls up on that nail, but as you can see, like, you can correct yourself, so don't panic if that happens to you. I should also mention why my nails look the way they do. I did just have a plain nude on, and my 3-year-old daughter today wanted to paint my nails, so I allowed her to paint them, and I didn't take it back off. I just tied it up with a brush and some acetone because it was on my skin, but she would have been really upset if I'd have took it off, so I left it on. So that's the why my nails look like they do. So this is the bit that I'm correcting near the cuticle area. You can see there's no shadow lines. I'm just making the wall where I've cut the same depth from cuticle to free end, so that when I put my glitter on this nail, it's got something to jut up against. So I've gone back into Rosy Peach, and I'm going to create a smile line on this nail. So people do this differently. I choose to put the smile line bead, the tip of the smile line bead first, because I have more control over it that way. So I kind of place it where I want the tip to be, and then work it back down towards the cuticle area, and then just tidy up my smile line coming from side to side, making sure I've got the same width of nail left at each side, so that's pretty central, and that my smile wings will end in the same place on the nail bed. So then I go back in and I do my cuticle bead. So I'm just going to push that into the cuticle area, and then using the tip of my brush, I'm going to pull that up the smile line bead. And that's because I want to create structure at the, from the cuticle up, part way up the bead, so I don't want to like use the belly and drag it down. So now I'm going to go back in and I'm going to do the blend down my ombre nails. So back into Rosy Peach, and my first bead goes over that blend line. So I place the bead on the nail, and then using the belly, I'll work it down the sides of the nail and use the tip of my brush to blend it down. So the main product sits over that blend line, and then just feather it down with the tip of my brush really lightly. And then I'm going to go back in and do my cuticle bead. And then once I've worked that in round to the cuticle, push that in, I'm just going to lightly bring that down over the nude that's already on the nail. So again, this is another ombre, so exactly the same technique. Place the bead over that feather line, and then use my brush to push it down the sides of the nail, just covering that line, but there's not a lot of product around the sides. Try and keep the majority of the product around the center of the nail, because that's where you'll need your structure, and you want your nails to be, you know, nice and narrow on the sides. You don't want any bulk. So I'm just gonna feather that down. And then I'm going to come in with my cuticle bead and do exactly the same. So just work that round the sides, pressing slightly, and then using the tip of my brush just to feather that back down. The blend has been done with my first bead, so this is literally just doing the cuticle, so you don't want this blend to come all the way down. But what I do notice is that I just need to add a little bit more, as I'm just not quite happy with the bead. So I'm going to feather it back and then back down again with the tip of my brush. It's really easy to go overboard on ombre, but once they're all done and buffed, like, it will look absolutely fine. So with this, going back to the pinky, I've now dipped my brush in a tiny bead of wet clear acrylic and then dipped it into the glitter. I think this glitter is Lemon Fizz. It's Pearl Lemon Fizz, and that is from Angel Glitter Mats. It's a really beautiful, light, summery colour. Some of the glitters, depending what finish they are slightly more tricky to work with, and I find the pearl glitters exactly like that, whether it be chunky or fine. I just find them that little bit more tricky, and it just takes a little bit longer to get into place on the nail and to get coverage. I'm not sure why. Maybe it's because they stick together or because of the finish on them. But you can see I'm just butting that up to the wall that I created with my craft knife. But I'm not bringing it all the way to the top of the wall. You'll see I've left a gap, and that's because that is going to be capped with clear acrylic. So once I'm happy with the coverage there, I just leave that ready to be capped in clear acrylic. So this finger is going to be a full glitter nail. So I'm again just using a wet bead of clear acrylic dipped in the glitter and then maneuvering that into place. And again, you'll see it doesn't go on just as easy as a normal fine, super fine glitter. The pearls are a little bit more difficult to get into place, but just take your time and you can put it over it. You can place in the gaps, it's absolutely fine. So but make sure you work in tiny beads of wet acrylic. Don't pick up too much, because then you'll end up bulking the nail up. So I've gone back to my smile line. Now I did take this nail out of the practice hand and I did file the smile line to make it crisp. I just find it really difficult to file on the practice hand, so I took it out to do that and then slotted it back in. You'll also find the way that I work, I kind of change the designs as I'm going along. I don't have a set thing in my head of what I'm going to do. So with this bead, I kind of changed my mind and then decided that I wasn't going to do a full bead. I was going to do a block on the end of this nail, a colour block. So it's just the way that I work. I can literally be starting the nail place product and then think, oh, actually that might be quite nice to do on the end of there. So this is probably, again, not exactly, if I knew this is what I was going to be doing on this nail, it's probably not how I would have placed it. I would have taken the white in a larger bead and placed it all over. But as I was still deciding, yeah, this is how I ended up doing it. And again, because the white was setting up and I needed to make that cut before it was dry. So I'm just using my craft knife to make a straight line across there. And then I'm going to go back into my bright white and finish up that smile line area, getting right down into the wings. But again, I find this white is very forgiving. You don't get any shadows where you've made a join as long as you're using the same ratio. Some whites can really pick up that you've added colour in. For me, you can't see it with this, so I wasn't too bothered. So now I'm going to go back and I'm going to cap all the nails in Crystal Clear from HD Pro. There's a pesky little bit of glitter on that nail bed there. So I'm just pushing it into the cuticle area, and this is obviously going to give me some structure. So this bead, once I've pressed it and pulled it a little bit, this is going to be part of my apex. So I'm now just feathering that down the nail and just checking my structure as I do that before I place the next bead. I always work in smaller beads. You'll never really see me do one bead method. I just find the application is more perfect. Not perfect, but more perfect, so that my filing routine is a lot shorter, and that works best for me. So I'm going to go back to the ring finger, and now that white is dry, I'm just going to crisp up that line, and then I'm going to butt up the yellow glitter in exactly the same way that I did the others. Tiny bead of wet acrylic, dipped into the glitter and buff it up, but not quite to the top because obviously it needs capping. So I've crisped that up, brush away the dust and make sure there's no dust on the others, that because I've just filed over them. You don't want to be capping bits of dust. And then placing that yellow glitter. So now I am literally just going to cap all the nails in crystal clear. So same way that I did on the thumb. I'm going to place work from cuticle to tip, and I might do it in 2 beads, 3 beads and even 4 beads sometimes, but that just means for me that my filing routine is a lot shorter, which I am happy about. So I place my bead and then I pull it up the nail, and then I use my brush to just pat in those sides and feather it down. So with the pinky, I don't need to build cap the nude, so the clear is going to come over the glitter. So I'm just going to pull that down, and I'm building a slight apex on there, and then all of that clear is then being pulled down on the glitter side, making sure those sides are really neat and tight. So then I filed these nails again away from camera because I pulled the tips out to file them, and then top coated with HD Pro Shine It. And then I have gone into Rhubarb Punch, also from HD Pro, and I am now going to do 3D little daisies. So I've just using my 3D acrylic brush, tiny bead on my brush, and drained it and then placed it on the nail. I then waited for it to go matte. You can't work with it if it's still shiny, it just doesn't do what you want it to do. So you'll see me there, and then I'm going to place it. I'm going to wait for that to go matte. Sometimes there's the monomer releases out of it and makes it go more wet looking than when you've initially placed it. So I'll just keep it in the position as it's turning matte, and then you will see we just try and get the shape of the petal a tiny bit, keeping it away from that petal that we've already done. And then I'm just going to dip the tip and pull back with the belly, and then I'm just going to up the sides, bring in the tip of that petal. With 3D work, I really don't mind if they look slightly different. I don't panic over it. I personally can't get them exactly the same. So you'll see them that they look slightly different, but I'm not overly bothered by that. I like the overall result, so I'm happy with that. So this is the same process for all the petals, and I always start with the top and then work my way around. So we go 3 and then 2 at the bottom, and that's how I do them. So there's an odd number of petals. So now I'm going into lemon sorbet, also from HD Pro, and the first 2 beads that I put on here I'm unhappy with, so I take them off. I think the first one was slightly too big and the second one slightly too small. So again, I'm just placing this bead. It's slightly wetter once put on the nail, so I'm just keeping that in position while it turns matte, and then I can work with it. So again, I'm going to tip the tip of my brush towards the center of the where the flower will be, and then use the belly of my brush to work it out, and then just tidy up those sides. So now I'm just going to get my glue and I'm just going to place the center of the flowers with little crystals. So with the smaller crystals, I find my glue works perfect. With my larger crystals, I have been using Acrygel. But this works perfectly. And then I'm just going to do the centers of the daisies on these. So a tiny dot of glue and then place your crystal. And then on the pinky, I'm just going to do a cuff of crystals around the cuticle area. Sorry, my hand is totally in the way there. So guys, I hope you've enjoyed watching this video. They certainly cheered me up today. Nice, bright, summery set. Enjoy the weather this week and I will see you again soon. Please like and subscribe.